Okay, good evening, everyone. Everyone hear me? Okay, if everyone would please take their seats. Obviously, we have a smaller, at least so far, crowd than we did last month, but we will endure. So for you who are here and those watching online, welcome to the second of our two candidate meet and greet events. Okay. The purpose is for you to ask questions of the candidates behind me. If you would please give your written questions on the note cards that are in the back there to Polly Balzer, who is making a return appearance as our moderator. Thank you, Polly. We're going to follow essentially the same format that we did a month ago, or last month. So really quickly, candidates get up to 2 minutes for opening remarks. They will get up to 2 minutes for closing remarks at the end. In between, Polly will pose the questions to the candidates. Each candidate will have up to 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond. Each candidate will have an opportunity to answer a question first. We'll do sort of the round robin that we did last time. The candidates are sitting where they are based on a draw that took place in January. One change from last time, we will have at the midway point a 10-minute, we'll call it necessity break. That was something that was voiced to me as part of the feedback from last month's meeting, so we'll do that. We will go until, with a 10-minute break, at about 8:10 approximately, or until we run out of questions, whichever comes first, okay? Again, if you do have questions, please deposit them in the box next to Holly. Polly. Sorry. Before we begin, are there any questions, general questions? Okay. I'll talk a little bit about the annual meeting and voting and that type of thing at the end. But for right now, I'm going to turn it over to Polly, and she will begin. Thank you so much for being here, and those of you at home as well.
And Jim, I missed it. Did you say we are going to do a 1 minute, 2 minute intro? Okay.
Oh, okay. By the way, we did test the microphones earlier today, and they all worked. Okay? They all worked. This is the second to last time you will see this sound system. Okay? We are getting a new sound system. It should be here by the time of the March board meeting. Okay? Maybe we'll have a party just for the sound system itself. I don't know. Anyway, I'm sorry. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, John. Okay, Mr. Brown?
Okay, Jim, thanks for having this and the board for providing us this opportunity. My name is Dan Brown, and I believe, how many people have not met me that I've not met? Could you raise your hand?
No, you've met.
Okay, please I'd love to take the opportunity to meet with you personally if you have time after the meeting to talk with you. This has been a great experience. I have met a whole lot of neat people running for this office. Everybody up here is a volunteer. I mean, so I think we ought to give everybody up here a round of applause at least one time for doing this. I'd like to also ask that, social media has been getting a little bit intense lately. Today was actually a slow day, but I would like to make sure and ask my supporters to please keep the message positive and appreciate what everybody up here is trying to do. Thank you.
Mr. Algen?
Thank you, Polly. Robert Aljo, if you want your property rights protected, the property that you own on the island, I recommend that you vote for me. That's what I'm really all about. I know we have a property owners association, which is over our properties, and we have our covenants and our bylaws and the articles of incorporation that govern the POA. But we also are Texans, living in Texas, whether you're from here or not, and we like our property, and that's what I'm about. So if that's what you're about too, you may want to consider voting for me. Thanks a lot.
Ms. Cutright?
Hi there, my name's Judith Cutright, and first I want to thank you all for taking such an interest not only in us, but in our POA. And I want to also give a special shout out to the board of directors that's currently serving, because it is a selfless service. And I think that there's been a lot of progress being made in the last few months. Also to the new team, they're relatively new on staff, and I think they've done a lot to streamline the operation. So I'm very encouraged and upbeat about what's happening with the POA. I think that current POA has certain strengths in law, finance, and business. Where I think there's a gap is in communications. And we need to improve communications with all of you and all of our members. And I think that's where I could be of service. I have an extensive background in communications. I've worked with global corporations as well as nonprofits in telling their story and increasing awareness and engaging their stakeholders in the whole process of their organization. So I also have a master's degree in public relations from George Washington University, and so I really think I can put all of that expertise and past experience in helping the POA to continue to progress. So I would love and be honored to serve, and if you'll have me, I'll be there and very committed. Thank you.
Mr. McKay?
Yeah, I'm right. That thing does work, doesn't it? I got a good one. Back that up a little bit. I'm Brian McCabe, and if I'm too loud, please tell me. This has been a really humbling experience. I mean, I have met more people, made more friends, gotten to see more of the island, learned more about the deep passion that people have for living here. I too want to congratulate the current and past boards, because this is a non-paid, selfless community service. This is why we're up here. Sometimes we all wonder, why are we doing this? It's been a good question. We're doing it because we care about this place. We're doing it because we live here, and we're going to live here for, nobody's getting voted off the island, I hope. And so that's why we're here, because we care passionately about our island, and there are things I think that the POA can do, and has been doing, and will continue to do. And to paraphrase my campaign sign, we can do it bigger, and we can do it better. So that's what I got.
Ms. McFadden?
Okay, is it working? Okay. Like Brian said, I'm Kelly McFadden. Like Brian said, one of the questions we're regularly asked, I think, as candidates is, why do you want to do this? And for the most part, since purchasing our first home in 1996 on the island, we were blissfully unaware of the POA, and I think that's true of a lot of members. But we did start noticing a few things, and so we did start getting involved. And in April 2017, we started live streaming the meetings, which I think has helped a lot of people just understand our governance. It's the first time people have been able to attend a lot of our board meetings. In June 2017, I organized the Island Squad just to help clean up. I started a community calendar that same summer, just started doing things to get involved in the community. In November 2017, myself, my husband Jim, and Carl Rubenstein formed the Arch when we had discovered that the bylaws had been amended to take away amending rights solely from the homeowners. We gathered signatures of 650 homeowners. We called a special member meeting, and we were able to successfully return bylaw amending rights solely to the homeowners. Okay. I publish, many people know I publish a lot online. I publish my positions. If you want to know what I think, all you have to do is either ask me or read my position papers. But with an election coming up, I was asking myself, even before I decided to run, what do I want to see in a candidate? I want someone who will follow the law. I want a fiscal conservative. And I want someone who will work towards a fully informed membership. These are items that I'm willing to work for, those and many other things. So I ask you to support my candidacy in the upcoming election.
Thank you, Ms. McFadden. I'm going to ask at this time if anybody has any additional... Your time's up?
Just
If
like in
anybody
church,
comes up.
who wants to, we're gonna pass the basket. So, anybody has any questions? Okay, all right.
Is it all over now?
No,
Okay.
no, okay. We're just doing this as
I might have
a
one.
convenience to you. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thinking it's gonna be a short meeting though.
No questions, we're out.
You knew it was coming.
Real quickly, you may bring up questions. I would ask that you come up with sides so that you don't block whoever may be speaking at the time. You can submit more questions during the course of the meeting. Okay, so thank you.
Mr. Brown, the first question is for you. Do you consider yourself an independent PIPOA candidate? And do you have a bias toward current board members?
Yeah, I consider myself an independent. I think everybody that knows me, and if you know me personally, I'm a pretty independent fellow. I have no bias toward any of the candidates or any of the existing board members at all, none.
Mr. Aljo?
Yes, ma'am, Polly. That sounds kind of like that question from a few weeks ago at our first thing where it's like, do you follow the law? Will you follow the law? So, yeah, my answers are yes and no. Thank you.
Ms. Cutright?
I have no bias. As a matter of fact, I think it's more important that we focus on solutions to any issues that may arise. And I really don't know the current board members very well at all, so I'm really looking forward to getting to know them better and to working with them. I think it's also good if you have diversity in various opinions within a board because you can feed off of each other. I just have one perspective that, you know, I present, and it's nice to get other perspectives so you can get the whole picture. So I think it's a good thing we have varied opinions.
Mr. McKay?
Yes, I do consider myself certainly independent. I've been practicing law 43 years. It's a job requirement. And yeah, I got some bias with the current and past board members. I admire them. This is an unpaid job. I live over here on Hawks Nest. It is rare the day that I will drive down Jefferson and not see the president's car, the treasurer's car, somebody's car out there, and that was true 5 years ago as it is today. So my bias would be, you guys have really devoted a lot to a non-paid community service. So to the extent that's a bias, that's my bias.
Ms. McFadden?
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with Brian there. I mean, anybody's going to have a certain amount of bias. I would call it an opinion. You know, you voice your opinion, and you listen to other people's opinion, and maybe you still focus on your opinion. Maybe you change your opinion based on other people's comments. I think that's part of the give and take of a good board member, and I would like to do that. So.
Mr. Aljo, next question. I would like to see how each of you interact amongst yourselves. Please take a few minutes to debate with each other a topic over, for example, bulkhead responsibility, social media, vote member participation in elections, meetings.
All right, thank you, Polly. Let's go, everybody. Mike's on.
What the heck was wrong with
Let's
that
get some
question?
feedback. We're supposed to debate now, right? I know.
Well, you know, it's not a question because there's no question mark at the end of it, okay?
How do you feel about bulkhead maintenance? That's what it is.
No.
Oh,
Read the question again.
I'm sorry. I didn't.
Just a moment, please. Give us a moment, please.
I would like to see how each of you, quote unquote, interact amongst yourselves. Please take a few minutes to debate with each other a topic like bulkhead responsibility, social media, vote/member participation in elections - meetings.
Let's start with bulkhead, yeah.
Well, if people want to, if the candidates want to debate, that's fine. If we want to, do away with the minute 30-second response rule, that's really up to you. That's up to you.
Well, I guess I'll turn my mic on. I guess I'm supposed to be the first one, but I think that really, if everybody turned the mics on, I think we're going to get feedback, right? Is that what's happening?
We can try.
Does anybody want to do that? Does anybody want to try to debate? I mean, I don't want to be leading this.
I'm not going to play. I'm not going to do it.
I'll just shut mine off too then. Sorry. I don't know what to do. It's a very long question. It's got a lot of parts. I mean, somebody says bulkheads, we can talk, we can talk about bulkheads if you want, but I mean, that question is like kind of way around.
Would you each like to suggest whether the question is an appropriate question or not, and then let's move on? If it's not, if it is, you can each have a minute to talk about that specific.
Well, yes, ma'am. Well, Polly, I love the question. I'm not sure that this format will really allow that, or if anybody wants, Dan doesn't want to do it. It's kind of odd. I mean, I think you have to admit it's a bit odd.
Is that a yes or a no, Mr. Alger?
To what?
To the
Do I want
question,
to
do
do
you
it?
want to, yeah.
Yeah, yes, I want to do it.
Yes, you want to do it. Ms. Cutright, do you want to answer that question?
Sure, I'm willing to participate. as
Mr.
long as
McKay?
you give feedback.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we're in debate amongst ourselves,
Okay.
but
Let's just have Mr. Aljo spend his time discussing the question, if that's okay with you.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, as far as getting along with everybody, from the time that we all first got together was about a month or so ago in the POA office, and we had this great little basket thing. It was like the lottery. You spun it, and it had these dice or something in it. It was like going to Las Vegas. And we all just kind of, I thought, really bonded a little bit over that experience. It was something that the POA had for years. It was way up in a closet somewhere, and our wonderful executive director pulled it out and did an awesome job. It couldn't have been any more fair. I just really enjoyed that experience. That was my first time meeting Ms. Cutright, Mr. Brown, and as far as Mr. McCabe, I mean, he's been a neighbor, new to the neighborhood there about going on 2 years, and we've had a lot of interaction. As he so generously stated before, I think maybe I was one of the first neighbors that he met because it was a litter critter day, and I was taking my truck to litter critter, and Brian happened to have a bunch of stuff that was ready to go there. So yeah, and as far as the McFadden's, I mean, they're really tied with the best neighbors I've ever had before. They're just down the block the other way, and I mean, I just love them. Dan Brown, it's nice to get to know you a little bit. Thought your picture looked great in the Island Moon. And it was from. First I didn't realize, is he sitting at the desk of a banker or something? Because you had that, it was from right here. That was pretty awesome. So I'm gonna shut up now, and I guess I'm done.
Am I supposed to pick up on all of that?
Ms. Cutright?
I think we all really respect and appreciate each other and admire each other for what we bring to the table. So I'm very thrilled to get to know all of you, and I feel now that I have even a bigger circle of friends, and that we all have something in common, that's to help the POA. And I would feel comfortable serving with any of you in any manner and on any kind of a board or committee.
I'm going to just really echo this. On March 10th, which is going to be the Sunday after the election, we're still going to be here. We're still going to be friends. We're still going to see each other and yell at each other at HEB. We're still going to be hopefully at IGA, Island activities. There's no animosity up here. There's no animosity that I perceive against the current board. Again, I'll go back. This is community service. I tried to raise my children, and I'm sure you did too, in community service. My kids built playgrounds when they would go on their church trips. They did homeless. They would go to shelters. Strong instill in them that we need to give back. We need to give community service. This is unpaid. This is volunteer. And so, if anything, I admire all of you, and those of you in the audience, particularly the board members, both present and past, for having given up your time and oftentimes with no thanks, sometimes with animosity, but we all learn the same lesson, of giving on behalf of the island to the best of our abilities.
Ms. McFadden?
Well, what I'd like to remember is that we're all neighbors, first and foremost. I mean, you know, I know there's a lot of stuff that goes on in social media, and I know that, and it's tough sometimes. But we still have to run into each other at the grocery store and wave to each other on the street. And I think, you know, I've enjoyed meeting Dan. I know Bob, he lives down the street from me. I've enjoyed the few times I've been able to meet Judith. I hope to get to know her better. Brian lives down the street from me. We wave to each other. I know most of you in the audience. I know where you live. I've been to your houses. So I think we just need to remember that first and foremost, that's where it needs to start, you know, and then we can worry about the other stuff.
Mr. Brown?
You know, a debate is really just an exchange of ideas and maybe trying to talk somebody into your idea. And I think by the questions that are asked and the different topics that Carter brought up, assuming that was your question, but that we can discuss those individual matters. And indeed, last time we did this, we talked about all the different ones. You know, it's amazing. Most of us are kind of on the same page, but there could certainly come up something that we could actually have a difference of opinion on. From that standpoint, I think this format works just fine for that, rather than having a bunch of people yelling back and forth through microphones going off at the same time. Thanks.
Thank you. Next question, Ms. Cutright? Have you ever sued or threatened to sue the PIPOA before? If so, how many times have you written your discontent and or signed, or dissonant and or signed documents like this?
Well, that's an easy one. I've never sued the PIPOA. So, that's it.
Mr. McCabe?
I'm a two-part. One, I have never sued the PIPOA and have never participated in one as an attorney, so I feel, as a lawyer, I gotta tell you, I've never represented anybody that wanted to. I've certainly never done it personally. And that's my answer.
Ms. McFadden?
No, I have never sued the PIPOA. Have I written documents that are critical of the actions of the PIPOA? Yes, I have.
Mr. Brown?
No, I've never sued Homeowner Association, no.
Mr. Aljo?
No, ma'am, Polly, I've actually never sued anybody. I guess there's a second part to that, which is something about, have I written dissonant things about our POA? I certainly have been critical of our POA on many occasions, just as I think that we can be about our governmental organizations above our POA. You know, it's county, state, city. I've been really active with city government. And you can really get things done when you are, and when you cooperate, but sometimes we're also critical. Why can't we have, for example, the sea turtle on the water tower? Well, it wasn't that hard to do. I got city council involved, and we got the Kent Shirley sea turtle painted up on the water tower. You can work with local government, you can work with state government, and you can work with the POA. You can get things done, and you can still be critical of them too. It's okay.
Mr. McCabe, next question. In the spirit of, quote, following the law, end quote, should a PIPOA candidate create marketing content for their campaign and use copyright commercial video / audio content without proper licensing?
Certainly, we have all created content. I have a web page. My son did my videos for me. I have no position on whether anything else is copyrighted. I tend to think it's probably not, but I'm not a copyright attorney. I think there's a 30-second rule or something like that. It doesn't bother me. I think it's cruel, personally. But yeah, I have created media content. My son graduated from the University of North Texas, and I'm getting some of my investment back. He's made a couple of movies of me talking. So I do believe that, yes, we can use social media in a positive way, and I have no problem whatsoever with the cartoons.
Ms. McFadden?
Thanks, I appreciate that. My marketing guy is my husband Jim. He does a really good job, I think. He does all my commercials, he does all my ads. I think he does a really good job, and I appreciate him for it.
Mr. Brown?
No, I don't think you should do things that aren't the right way to do things. But, you know, using logos and things like that, some people forget their own paper, and I don't know, maybe you shouldn't do it. But did you do it with any ill intent? I don't know. But at the end of the day, social media can be a good thing, and it can also be a seriously negative thing. And I believe that social media in this particular homeowners association, for the most part, is a disaster.
Mr. Aljo?
Yes, ma'am, Polly, thank you very much. I'm retired from 30 years of Coast Guard service, was active duty for 30 years, and did search and rescue primarily. But I also had a stint as a civil rights facilitator for 3 years, legal office, worked with a lot of legal stuff. That's about all I know with regard to legal stuff like that, protection of rights and stuff. But when I graduated from the Coast Guard, retired that is, I had money from the VA to go back to graduate school. So I picked a program in public administration. So there I was in this really boring program of public administration. Oh, and it's all computer research and writing papers, and you know the job would, and I didn't even need it. I don't need a job. I'm retired. I'm fine. And so I said, somebody talked some sense in me. Said, you know, if I was getting VA money to go to college and have fun, I'd probably go to art. So I went to art. So I was working on a Master's of Art over at TAMU, and I mean really therapeutic pottery, clay, all that stuff. But I learned some stuff about sampling when it comes to different multimedia things. There's a certain allowance that's legal, and it's called sampling. You can take a certain amount of seconds of something, and you can use it, and it can be part of your creation as long as it's limited to a certain amount. I was kind of surprised to find that out. If to find really anything out like that in an art program, I thought it was just going to be a bunch of basket weaving and stuff. But yeah, I must be. Is what we're about to go off yet?
Ms. Cutright?
Having worked in broadcasting and also in print for major clientele, I have to be very cautious how I use anything, videos and commercials and that sort of thing. I'm just very aware and cautious of how you utilize any information that you take from the client, their logo or whatever. So I try to be very careful not to misuse it. And there's stringent requirements on how you use that information as well. So it's very important to me not to overstep those bounds. I'm sure if it's an innocent use of something, then you know, so be it, and then, you know, it's not hurting anyone. But overall, if it's out there for the public to see, then I would be very cautious about its use.
Ms. McFadden, next question. What is the impact of areas seceding from the POA? Short-term, long-term, can they rejoin?
Well, the possible secession of sea pines is disturbing. I mean, we're a group of neighborhoods, and we need all of the neighborhoods, both the waterfront neighborhoods and the dry lot neighborhoods. I think the POA has not given enough. Obviously, the dry lots are not feeling the value of the POA, and I think that's what we're seeing with sea pines. As a water lot owner, I see value. You know, I see them come around and fix the bulkheads. We had a massive bulkhead repair on a property that we own, the seawall next door. We had a severe tie wall failure, and we watched them fix it. So I find great value in the POA. Dry lot communities, maybe not so much. I think there's some things we could probably do to fix that. Maybe dedicate a small amount of the budget every year to to things in the community that would appeal more to the dry lots. The Village Park was a very popular thing. We don't necessarily need to spend that amount of money every year, but I think a $20,000 or $30,000 improvement in the community once a year in the park or something like that would go a long ways to showing some value to the dry lots.
Mr. Brown?
I've been doing a lot of thinking about the sea pines and the waterfront lots and the interior lots. And both need and do better if the canals and the bulkheads are maintained well. Interior lot that's 2,000 square foot home is going to sell on the island for a lot more than it's going to be selling for across the bridge. And the reason is because it's on an island. It has access to boat ramps, it has access to canals, and just the whole, and also the value of the waterfront lots generally are much higher. And so that just drives values up. So I think we need to find a way to add value to the landlocked lots and one's not on the water. We cannot afford to have them pull out, and we need to find a way to provide value for them.
Mr. Aljo?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Polly. So sea pines, it looks like that's probably going to happen. It would be precedent setting for our POA, first time to have a subdivision withdraw, secede from our POA. It appears that they've done everything right as far as I can figure out. It's not that hard to do as far as the members go. They just need to get a majority of the members who own property, the lots there, to vote to withdraw. And that's should be no secret. That's written in every batch of covenants, of all the covenants that we have, 30 or so. And with sea pines, it's not that big of a problem legally because it's all dry lots and there's no POA common area. And some people think of sea pines, they think of Coquina Bay, which is on the north side of sea pines, and that's of course got a lot of wet areas. Now, that would be a problem. When any subdivision wants to withdraw from our POA, of course our POA owns all of the bulkheads. What's going to happen to the bulkheads? Would the POA just relinquish the rights that the POA owns? And maybe they're pretty valuable rights to those bulkheads. Would somebody be interested in assuming that, or would it go with a sale at auction? There's a whole, that's going to take probably a bunch of lawyers to figure that out.
Ms. Cutright?
I think we need to make sure that other subdivisions that may be considering such a thing come to realize that we're all in this together. No individual resident, no subdivision is an island unto itself. We are all part of the island, and one part of the island affects another part of the island. And we need to help engage maybe some town hall or information gathering meetings with various subdivisions, especially those that might be considering such a thing, need to be set up so we can help them realize the impact that the POA has on the entire area, not just on certain subdivisions. Because as I said, we all need to, and the more I think they're engaged, again, it's a whole thing about communications, the more they're engaged in the process, the more they'll feel part of it. And that's key to helping them strengthen the POA as well.
Mr. McKay?
I agree with Dan. All of our property values are sort of codependent on other people's property values. So if sea pines drops out, which they may have already done, I'm not sure exactly where that process is. That's one thing, but it opens a Pandora's box because the next one that drops out, what Judith is saying is, okay, what if they have bulkheads? What if they have canals? What happens then? And yeah, it's going to take a lot of lawyers to figure it out. I think we need to flip the script and try to get people to want to stay. And the second part of your question was, can they come back? Sure. I do believe if there was a petition out there saying, okay, It's a couple of years now, and this is probably not a good thing we did. We'd like to come back. I would think the POA could welcome them legally with open arms.
Sorry.
That's my side.
That wasn't your timer.
I'll take it as such.
An extra minute.
Next question, Mr. Brown. Do succeeded subdivisions have access to boat ramps and canals?
I'm not positive. As a practical matter, the way we run the ramps and the boat ramps now, anybody from the city of Corpus Christi can use them. I don't know legally if we can actually restrict the public from using them. I think, if they keep boats parked there and they don't have the stickers, perhaps you could have something towed away, but I'm not positive about that. And, but right now, we don't generally prohibit folks from crossing the bridge, coming over and using the ramp, so I don't know how practically we'd be able to do that.
Mr. Aljo?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Polly. Yes, of course, they would still have access to the canals, just as Mr. Brown said, everybody does. And the boat ramps too, frankly, are legally open to anybody to use from Florida or wherever. And, but it does take a POA parking sticker to legally park in the parking lots associated with the boat ramps, as well as a trailer sticker, or the same sticker can actually be applied to the cardboard thing put on your dashboard by your inspection sticker on your car, and you have both your POA circle and your inspection sticker, and as long as it's registered to you there and everything, then, because that's where the tow truck drivers look. They have to look at your credentials on your windshield there. Yeah, the canals and the boat ramps are open. But again, I don't recommend water lots. I don't recommend any other subdivisions seceding. Let's all get. Can't we all get along?
Ms. Cutright?
As long as you have the proper permits, you're allowed to use those boat ramps, so it's pretty clear they would certainly have the right to go ahead and use those.
Mr. McCabe?
Just echoing what everybody else said, yes, they have the right to use the boat ramps, they have the right to use the canals if they park there without a proper POA sticker, which you really can't get unless you live here, then they can be towed away.
Ms. McFadden?
And I'll be number 5. Yes, obviously, anybody can use the boat ramps, but all of the POA boat ramp lots, or the lots where they are owned by the POA, so the POA can dictate who can park there, which is why we're allowed to use the stickers and to potentially tow if they're parked there without a sticker.
Mr. Aljo, next question. What would be your plan for bulkheads repair and maintenance?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Polly. So my plan would be the same as the POA's plan, which is to have a priority list of what bulkheads need to be repaired. And that's like triage. It's like we've got a bulkhead that's crumbling, it's worse, it's bleeding. Send it into the operating room. Let's get it worked on. We've got Mr. Pezzi has been doing most of that work for the POA. He does other waterfront POAs or HOAs with bulkheads too. He really knows what he's doing. Very expert at it. For over 30 years, concrete and that sort of work is what he does. Now maybe we need additional people to do that too. I mean, the bulkheads are 50 years old now. They need a lot more work. We've got some that need more in-depth work. In fact, when they kick out at the bottom because the sand is eroded for whatever current caused that, that's more work. But yeah, the bulkheads need to be maintained and repaired, and that is the responsibility of the POA as long as the subdivisions are still part of the POA. And if they're not, all hell's gonna break loose, all I can say. I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't think anybody really does.
Ms. Cutright?
It's my understanding that there is an inspection are going on currently to see and prioritize what parts of the bulkhead need to be handled according, and that's due to our great staff and Jim's team. So things are underway, and I think once that priority list is established, of course, you always have certain areas, such as the one near the German bakery that needs immediate attention, will be moved up on the priority list. But as far as I understand, I think we're underway with a good process, and it's going to have to be continued and followed through, and just a matter of scheduling and keeping on top of it.
Mr. McCabe?
I agree with that, except I would increase the amount of maintenance. Right now, from my understanding, we're not really putting anything away in our emergency or rainy day fund or whatever. I would not be opposed to increasing the maintenance budget from that fund. I think the current budget contemplates somewhere around $600,000. I would certainly advocate that we spend more. That's our biggest liability. That's our biggest, to me, the biggest concern that BOA has right now is to maintain those bulkheads. I think the work that's being done by the guy that we're talking about is fine, but I'd ramp it up. I would increase that budget amount quite a bit.
Ms. McFadden?
Yes, as Brian said, we budgeted about $600,000 this year for bulkhead maintenance. A lot has to do because we have had quite a bit of backlog of maintenance items to do. Ramping it up, but might be a problem. Current budgeted income this year is just right under $2 million. Our current budgeted expenses are about 1.770. So we've only got in this year's budget a surplus of a little over $200,000. And with what's now known with the bulkhead collapse over by the German bakery, that extra $200,000 is not going to be enough. My concern is over the next several years, we may have to make some hard decisions about what we're spending, because either we're going to have to figure out how to get more or figure out how to spend less in other areas, because these bulkheads are our prime reason for being here. We must keep them maintained.
Mr. Brown?
I agree with what everybody said, but I also think Brian is spot on when he says we need to spend more money. And we do have a little bit more money out of a budget with $1,959,000 in revenue, $600,000 on the bulkheads. That's total expenses of $1,845,000. We actually have $113,000 left over, perhaps spending a little more money, but I think everybody hit on a piece of the problem with making sure we prioritize and do that. But the other thing about bulkheads that has really got me concerned, at least to try to find a solution for our plan B, is if we ever have a catastrophic event, a hurricane with a direct hit that does more damage than the $9.5 million or so that we have in cash for that expense. So I'd still like to try to address that issue.
Ms. Cutright, next question. Do you know who is the
Very dramatic question.
You have to agree that she's in communication.
Yeah,
Anybody object?
I don't reject, give it to me.
I think we need to be a handwriting document more than anything else.
Everybody else. Do you know who is the,
Board of directors.
yeah, board of directors of, I need my glasses, of, what does?
Maybe this needs to be a group effort.
My glasses on.
Because we could not read it. I'm
There's
sorry.
a POA support. Do you know
The
who is
MMD.
the board of directors for maybe
The MMD,
ISA?
no. it's
Oh,
the
the
MMD.
MMD, yeah.
CMMD?
No, MMD.
Oh, that's the-
Oh, those are M's?
You mean the municipal management?
Yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah.
municipal management
Yeah.
support. Did you get it?
Yeah.
You need to get it.
No, I understand, but I just want Polly to
Who
get
is
it.
the board of director, who is the head of the board, what does it say?
It says who is on the board of
Board of the-
directors,
of the
MMD,
MMD,
what does the MMD do, and do you support first?
Yeah.
What he said. Ms. Miller.
You can't go wrong with that answer.
I know what it is. Well, unfortunately, I don't know anyone on the municipal management district. I guess I better get to know them. So, I'm gonna pass and let the others answer that.
Mr. McKay.
Yeah, we have an MMD, and it's a mess. I've created MMDs, there's about 60-something of them in the state. I've worked with them, they can be very valuable if they're drafted correctly. This is one of those, just don't want to see sausage being made at the legislature because the sausage is really still very obvious. It doesn't work. I know it was done for the best of all purposes, which is the event we had a catastrophic loss. We could use somehow MMD funds to issue bonds that would be paid back over time through the FEMA payments. It has some assessments, which really legally I could never give an opinion on. It doesn't have taxing power. It's kind of a waste. So no, I don't, in its current form, there's no way I can support it. It needs to be either redone or just done away with.
Would you please ask the question again?
Do you know who is the board of directors of MMD? What does MMD do? Do you support them? Ms. McFadden?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the MMD was put in place in 2013, kind of like Brian mentioned. It was put originally in place with the hope of being able to have access to FEMA funds, from what I understand, in the event of a catastrophic damage to the bulkheads that exceeded our reserves. I think that's been disproven, so we do still have an MMD, and the question is there any value to it at this point? I've talked to a lot of people about the MMD, asking questions about it, and every time I ask, I said, is it, can we use it? And the answer is generally, we don't know. And so we have it. I think we ought to find out if we can use it. It would be nice to at least have some sort of legal opinion as to what we can and cannot do. Is it, does it have any value in the event of a catastrophe? And more importantly, once we learn that information, we should document it somewhere so that 10 years from now, when the son of Harvey shows up, and none of us are sitting here anymore, and they can dust off the MMD document and say, here's what we need to do to make use of this.
Mr. Brown?
Yeah, as a banker, I finance many subdivisions that utilize the concept of an M&D like a mud district. And it's generally done when something is built or developed for the first time, not like something that's this seasoned and this many moving parts. And then what happens is, after the city of Fort Worth or Dallas expands into that area, puts them in their ETJ, they ultimately take over, and then they destroy the MMD. They wipe it out. So, would it have the ability so that we could actually pass bonds? Unless we can utilize taxing, unless we can place a tax out there, we wouldn't have the ability to get it financed. There's just no bank or investor would be willing to finance anything that has just gone through a disaster without having the ability to pay taxes or to impose a tax to get it done. Certainly they're not going into a POA where people aren't paying dues. So we have to find, an MMD was an approach to do that. I'm not sure it was the right approach, but we do need to find a mechanism that will allow us to get financing if indeed we have a disaster.
Mr. Aljo?
Yes, ma'am. Thanks, Polly. So you asked who's on it. Well, I know Stan Halls, a former POA board member, is on it. It was created through the POA board in conjunction with the city based on what was thought to be the utility of repair, as people have been saying, for disasters and stuff. From what I've read about the municipal management district, I've read that they're able to make assessments, and there's some debate about that, but I mean, that's what I read in it, and assessments mean, well, it's kind of like a tax, but not really. It's like, well, how much money do we need from these people because their place got devastated? We're gonna make them do that, pay up now, kind of thing. So there's some risk to this MMD, but depending upon, I don't know. From what I understand, it is a mess, as Brian, and Brian's a lawyer, and as he pointed out, and I would probably agree with that. I'm not sure that it could really be used that way for such a utility in the event of a disaster, based on the way things got written, and that's about all I know about that.
Mr. McCabe, next question.
Carter, that was close to a debate, wasn't it?
Pretend board meeting to see how they interact. I move that the POA continue the bulkhead condition survey until all bulkheads have been evaluated. Seconded, discuss before vote. This lets everyone see how the candidates interact in quote-unquote real board situation.
Polly, there was a question in there after pretend, and what was the motion?
I move that the POA continue the bulkhead conditions survey
Okay, I think that's kind of the question.
until all bulkheads have been evaluated.
Right. And yes, I would certainly move that they continue the survey, because unless we know what we have, as we've all discussed, if we know the current conditions, I have kind of parallel this. I go to the ISAC meetings too, and I see what ISAC has done with Hackery Channel, and they've got this big overlay, and it's got red parts that we really need to do right now. It's got some yellow parts that, we need to get around to that. We got some green parts that are probably okay. That may be a lot to ask of our 32 miles of bulkheads, but until we have a firm engineering study of where are the weaknesses and where we can prioritize, it's a difficult situation. So if a pretend board meeting with that motion were made, I would certainly vote yes.
Ms. McFadden?
Yes, in a pretend board meeting, if that came up, I would vote yes.
Mr. Brown?
I think we have a motion and a second, and I vote yay.
Mr. Aljo?
Well, I guess this is the discussion part. It seems to me the question is kind of like that one when we go back to a few weeks ago in the first meet and greet as candidates. Do you intend to follow the law? Well, I mean, you have to, it's yes. Or no, let's not look into the bulkheads. Let's not, no, why should we make a set, why should we figure out the state that our bulkheads, no, of course we need to do that. I mean, I don't want to be disrespectful, so I'm just going to say yes. And
Ms. Cutright?
Well, I certainly agree with everyone else that it should be a yes. It's part of best practices. If we are responsible for the bulkhead, so we need to follow through and on our responsibility. So absolutely. And I'm not sure. I guess we'd have to ask Marvin to call for a vote. I don't know how else we do this once the discussion's finished.
Ms. McFadden?
put it off till the next meeting.
Oh,
Next question. Have you ever been on a board before? Tell us of that experience. Did the board work together? Productivity, question mark. Ms. McFadden?
No, I've been sat on a board before.
Mr. Brown?
I've sat on more boards than I care to remember, but most of the boards that have followed the rules and procedures and at least tried to follow the Robert Rules of Order. Not they don't always do it, but they get close. But then there's some that are what I call really grassroots organizations, where sometimes they even forget to elect board members formally, and then you just start showing up, and next thing you know, they're calling you a board member. So I've worked in all of them, but generally, I don't think I've ever worked on a board where the people haven't all gotten along. That's a little odd, and it's not necessarily the way it should be, because I think you ought to have dissenting votes, and we have had dissenting votes, but at the end of the day, they were done, well, like my motto, a gentleman's son, where if you disagree without being disagreeable, they were all done in that context.
Mr.
Yes, ma'am.
Aljo?
Thank you. I have sat on so many boards. I'll tell you what, I've sat on boards, gosh, I remember even being a little kid. And when you get splinters, oh man, they can be a real big problem. But nevertheless, I'm supposed to be serious about this stuff. So it wasn't a board per se, but I was on an executive steering committee for 3 years when I had the civil rights position for the 8th district down here. It was weird because, you know, I wasn't a big shot, but yet I had this department, and I was on this, all of a sudden I find myself sitting in with all these people with all this gold on their shoulders and stuff like that, or on their sleeves, depending on the uniform of the day. And, mostly it was a lot of boring stuff to me. They were the ones that had to make the decisions. I really shouldn't have even been in there, but they always, you know, they go around and they ask you for your opinion and stuff, and I would give it, and a lot of times they didn't want it. But so for 3 years, about once a month, I did that. I don't want to belittle it because those kinds of things have a lot of effect on people. I went to the architectural control meeting yesterday, and there was a poor woman in there who was trying to get something done on her property, and she just looked at the people on the board, if you will, the ACC, the committee, and she said, you men are all very powerful people, and she was scared. And you know, that's not lost on me. That's not lost on me.
Ms. Cutright?
I've had the privilege of serving on several boards, and I've found that everybody has treated each other with dignity and respect. It's been a great experience for me. One thing that I found was very helpful with a couple of boards, we would hold retreats where we'd get together and we'd focus in on our goals and our strategies for moving forward, how we were going to do that, and it just really helped to clarify everything and bring us together so we were all on the same page. And I would recommend maybe we could do that with the POA too.
Mr. McKay?
The boards I've sat on really don't count. Little league parents, kickball parents for my daughter, theater. But I have advised many boards, city councils, commissioners, courts, special districts, and yeah, they're not all clean. There are two in particular that always come to mind because they're the only two I've ever been to, in addition to this one where we had to have a policeman there. No, there was not agreement. There were people that had feuds going back to high school. There were a lot of dissension, and sometimes they were able to work through it, sometimes they didn't. I've seen the example I gave of brand new elementary school that was desperately needed in the community. Well, it went down on a 3-2 vote, and I asked the guy later, I said, why did you vote no on this? This is cool, this is great. He said, because my daughter didn't make cheer squad this year. Oh my God, you know, so in analyzing the decisions, it's sometimes goes much deeper. But yeah, I've sat on boards and I've seen dissension, but I've also seen many boards that are able to accomplish their goals.
At this time, we're going to take a 10-minute break.
taking a break picture.
It's fun, you know.
It's like the little test pattern they took after midnight.
Do I have any proprietary? Could that be a Levi's shirt? Am I going to be in trouble? I don't know. Hi, sir. I don't think I've seen you before. I'm Robert Aljo. Oh, are you? Let's see. There's a Susan Christensen.
Yep. Here's my wife.
Oh,
My wife.
wow. Nice to meet you.
Yep.
She seems so nice. The things that she writes all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Is she doing okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. She didn't. She had to stay home tonight.
Yeah, she has a bad knee.
Gosh, she's always so nice. When I see that name, I think, oh, it's gonna be cool.
You at all in a while. Hi, Kevin.
No. Well, me neither. Well, cool. It's really cool to meet you. I had no idea. Yeah, well, let's see. This is on too. Yeah, this is the election. This is the big election for it. So we'll see what happens. I don't know. I really don't know.
I like to sit over there. That way, she had really glad sober and she saw him. I was right behind his head.
You were mayor?
Sure.
What city?
Columbus, Wisconsin.
Except for you.
Yeah, it was okay. It did good. About 4,100 people. Not that much, but you'd be surprised. 4,100.
Conflict.
Oh, yeah. I was on the city council first. And
He's a mayor and city council member for up in Wisconsin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is Susan Christensen's husband.
Oh.
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
You never know. I just was like, I don't think I've seen you before.
Oh, we had all kinds of issues up there. Employees killing themselves.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we had one employee blow his head off. And I had to fire a police officer for doing that stuff. And had to hire a police.
Well, you had your own police officer.
We had our own police department. We had our own public works. We had our own wastewater treatment. And we had our own dispatch. And we had our own recycling.
Did you buy utility services from like another larger municipality near you?
I don't know how they did that.
Because here, Corpus Christi sells water to Westville, to Fort Hays.
Yeah, well, we had our own wastewater treatment facility. We did that all. And, I really don't know how they did all that. I wasn't, and then I was also in the department along with the firemen.
Awesome. I'm a trained firefighter. My first year in the Coast Guard, I was in this big Oshkosh, where you had all this training and everything. And I was a driver for the Oshkosh. But first I started as, I don't know if you even know this, I started as a hose deployer. These big Oshkosh airport fire trucks, they have a foam hose that has a reel. And so I was the guy that would have to get out in the asbestos suit and everything. One time we got called into town because they needed our foam. We were airport, Coast Guard. But and I have to I'm walking through like gasoline and water, and it's steaming because it had just been put out by the fire department with water fog. That's why they called us for foam, because it was a big gas station on fire. And they're like, hey, you need to go out there, Aljo. You're going to go out. Yeah, I have the asbestos suit, the coil suit. But I mean, I'm walking through. Some of it was going over my boots.
Really?
Yeah, that's.
Well, I was in the fire department, and then they asked me if I wanted to be an EMT, so I became an EMT also. All while I was still on transportation.
Man, I have so much respect for you, just based on all that stuff right there.
Yeah, I learned a lot of.
You never know who you're going to talk to.
Yeah, I was pretty busy.
Yeah. I'm going to see if I can use a record. Hi. How are you doing?
Good.
Working hard? Are you working?
Not working too much right now. It's not right now. I was gone so much last year. We'll see what happens. I'm trying to find maybe something Germany. Last year I was in Florida for 5 months. Phoenix, Arizona. I don't know what I'm gonna do. 2 more years I'm gonna retire.
Well, that'll be even better.
All right, everybody, let's start making our way back to our seats.
And I can actually spell it.
All the way down to the end, left.
You all came to order so quickly.
Almost.
Judith.
What are you gonna do?
We're one down.
Can we wait for Judith just for a second? Your purse is here, so she's coming.
Jim, the mics are working great.
Don't jinx me.
As soon as you threaten them, they start working. Would you keep them outside overnight?
In the cold, in the rain, in the mist.
Did you do this to him?
I don't know, but I will next time.
Yeah.
No, it won't be next time.
Oh, that's right.
There must be a,
Retirement party for the sound system?
We could, or we could have a retirement party, and then we could have like a welcome party for the new one.
Yeah, we're looking at the Porta Johns and keep pictures.
there must be a mixer, an audio level mixer or something. Is that?
Over there.
Oh, okay. 'Cause I was just thinking like Brian, he's getting feedback, it's super loud.
Sorry, everybody.
Mr. Brown? next question will go to you. Does the PIPOA have term limits for board members? If so, what are they? If not, would you suggest putting them in place? Vote for term limits.
You know, I think if I remember, and of course I've got them right here, but I believe you can run for 2 3-year terms, and you have to sit out a 3-year term before you can be elected. Marvin, that sound about right?
That does. Good job.
Okay. But yes, and I think as everybody knows, I think getting new blood in an organization is important, and that is why I have publicly stated my wife you hold me accountable, and she called me at intermission and said I needed to hold my head up more. So that good, baby? So I'm only going to run for 1 term and give somebody else a chance to do this after that.
Mr. Aljo?
Yes, ma'am, Polly. So this is one of those easy questions. The first person answers it, and then there's the same answer. I mean, it's not opinion, so I mean, I'm done, I guess, right? So the only thing about the question is, are there term limits, and if so, how long are they, and is there a gap? And that's already been answered, so I'll just say yes, with all that stuff. We just even had our board president concur, so I challenge anyone else down the road to contradict.
Ms. Cutright?
Ditto, and I think it's a good thing that there are term limits, because as Dan said too, fresh blood is good for any organization, so.
Mr. McCabe?
Asked and answered.
Ms. McFadden?
Yes, they were put in a year ago, almost this month, almost a year ago today. So they got 2 terms, and then you guys did a term out.
Mr. Aljo, next question. What are the powers of the MMD? I think that's been asked and answered. Do you all agree? Right, next question, Mr. Aljo. Sorry. That's what happens when I try to do it without looking. What do you think about ARCH? Didn't members have the ability to change bylaws already?
Yes, ma'am. So the ARCH, it sounds like ARCH. It's an acronym, of course. It was the Amendment Revision Coalition of Homeowners, ARCH. Sounds kind of like Batman or something, but it's not. It's just a legal thing. Our covenants and bylaws allow, the bylaws actually allow, or is it in the Articles of Incorporation? I bet you they're involved, because that's what talks about how you can make changes. Anyway, yeah, it was the Amendment Revision Coalition of Homeowners. And I'm sorry, if there's more to the question, it's like, what did it do and how did it do it? Is that it, or what?
Didn't members have the ability to change bylaws already?
Yeah, well, let's see now. Before those bylaws got amended by the current board to eliminate the board being able to just change the bylaws, which had been done prior to this current board. I think that was probably a difficult thing for our property rights. I think that the ARCH helped to resolve that issue, among other issues, and helped to protect our property rights. And that's, again, what I'm about, protection of our property rights. Members, you also asked, do have the ability to amend those by majority vote of the covenant, the subdivision, excuse me.
Ms. Cutright?
I think ARCH was trying to bring attention to the fact that the bylaws cannot be changed without the majority of the membership vote, and that was the purpose of that movement. And it's already a fact, true, that you need a majority of members to vote in order to make any kind of revisions in that respect.
Mr. McCabe?
Well, the answer is obviously yes, because it happened. The members had the right to do so, and the members did do so.
Ms. McFadden?
Prior to 2013, our bylaws specified amendments solely by the homeowners. In September of 2013, the then board changed the bylaws and granted themselves the right to amend the bylaws. In 2017 and 2018 alone, they amended them 4 times, and they never once asked the homeowners. So we came forward with the Arch Movement. We collected enough ballots to call a special members meeting to return the bylaw amending rights solely to the homeowners as they were prior to 2013.
Mr. Brown?
Kelly, that's the way I recall it as well. I think Arch was primarily trying to clean some things up in the documentation as well as what everybody else said. I think it just kind of clarified some things and got things cleaned up as well. So.
Next question, Ms. Cutright. Is the navigation,
Oh no, do I have to put my glasses on?
That's more than all.
thank you, Roger. Navigation. Markers. Is the navigation markers project completed?
I don't think it's ever completed. I think you need to make sure that they are maintained as well. And you also need to make sure that the Coast Guard and any other officials that are should be involved are to make sure that they are. I think you're talking about the new ones that were installed. Is that what you're referencing? That's what how I'm interpreting it. So anyway, but as far as I'm concerned, it's an ongoing thing. We always have to make sure they're maintained, and we need to involve the people that have the authority to place them where they should be placed, to check with them as well.
Mr. McKay?
No, I don't think it's resolved yet, and I think it's got a ways to be resolved. There's obviously controversy, and I really don't want to speak to that the same way I wouldn't speak to someone in litigation. This isn't litigation, but it is certainly a matter of great controversy, and it's a done deal insofar as there are markers out there.
Ms. McFadden?
From what I understand, the markers are in. I know there has been some ongoing work to remove some of the old markers. I'm not 100% sure if that's completed yet, but I know that they were still in the process of that. And I know there has been some comments that they possibly would like a few more markers in, and that can be some back and forth, I think, that can go on with the community. But more importantly, they have put a contract in place for maintenance of the markers, so that we don't get into a situation where they get so that they're so poorly maintained that we have to deal with this ever again. Because it's been very contentious, and it's been unfortunate for the community, but hopefully moving forward we can keep those markers maintained and not have to go through this again.
Mr. Brown?
I think I recall reading in the Island Moon, maybe an article, Marvin wrote, or somebody, that there's still some more work that needs to be done on it. It's not quite complete yet.
Mr. Aljo?
Yes, ma'am, I got it. So it's really pretty much been answered, and I concur. And so I'll just take this short period of time to add a little bit of my experience. Before I retired from my 30 years of Coast Guard service, I used to fly over all this area, helicopters. And so we would see sometimes these tugs pushing into 2 barges of benzene, usually it's benzene from the refineries and stuff, back and forth. And so these tug drivers are way in the back behind, this is about 160 feet of barges. So what they do is they hit the channel markers, the buoys and all that, the green ones, the red ones and stuff. And sometimes they wedge on the front anchor chains or the attachments on the front of the barges. One time we were radioing, VHF FM to one of the tugboat captains because he's got a buoy, he's broken the anchor, he's taken out a buoy marker, in the intracoastal, and we're telling him, Captain, you've hit a buoy and you've taken it out. and we'd like you to pull over and say this and that. No, we didn't. No, we didn't. It's like, well, we're flying over you. We're just behind you. Right? They can't hear us because they're engines. We're right behind you right now. We're flying over you, and we're looking at the buoy, and it's attached to the bow of your barge. And he's like, no, it isn't. So anyway, these things happen. I'm saying this because we've got 4 of those marker buoys that are ours that we've put out there at our entrances to the Intracoastal, and these things happen, and they need a constant attention.
Hey, Polly, I'd like to correct that. Marvin shook his head. He said he did not suggest setting the island moon, so I stand corrected on that.
Mr. McCabe, next question.
You misinterpreted my head shake. But I don't want to.
No worries. I just don't want to put words in somebody else's mouth, and I shouldn't have brought it up without checking first.
Continue.
Yeah, no worries.
Mr. McCabe, do you favor having surveillance cameras in and around the POA office might help with porta potty fires and cars driving through Billish Park?
I am been told that that's happened. I've actually seen the potty fire debris. If we're going to have cameras, that's going to be expensive. Somebody's going to have to install them. Again, my emphasis is on the bulkheads, the canals, the common area. No, I don't think I would want cameras out there. I mean, it's not that I wouldn't want them, but it's just an expense that I just don't think we need to incur.
Ms. McFadden?
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Brian. As much of an electronics geek that I am, and I know many of us have cameras around our houses, and trying to keep them running in the salt air can be a problem. So before I would look at any kind of surveillance, anything around the POA office, I definitely want to look at the cost versus the benefit to see if it's something that would be beneficial to us. But on the surface, I would go, I'm not sure if, I know they do the porta potty. Seems like about once a year somebody decides to set it on fire. I'm not sure that cameras would prevent that. I think if people are going to do it, they're going to do it anyway. And all we would do would see some blurry kids running through the park, with a lighter, and we would still go, wonder who it was. So on the surface, I don't think I would support those.
Mr. Brown?
Holly, could you read that question one more time? I want to make sure I get this right.
Do you favor having surveillance cameras in around the POA office might help with porta potty fires and cars driving through Billish Park?
Well, I have security cameras around my house, and they come in very handy. They're not very expensive. They're wireless. It wouldn't hurt to have them. And they're fairly inexpensive. So, I mean, if the POA thought that they would offer a little extra level of security, they're very inexpensive to have. And they actually do have good resolution.
Mr. Aljo?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Polly. So I also think that it would be a good idea to have a security camera or two pointed towards the front entrance windows of the POA office. And I hate to say this, but unfortunately, things are kind of getting more heated and contentious from some people in the POA. It might not be a bad idea to have a camera or two for security purposes to protect. We've got an investment in our POA office there. Another thing is, as far as pointing, I think we should get a big camera, one of those big ones, that's like on a thing, and off the back of the POA office, and a big one, and point it towards that toilet, and maybe even another one on the corner, point it towards the kids' playground, and they won't be hooked up to anything. You can get them about $22 or something, I think, at Harbor Freight Tools. They look really real, and these dumb rear-end kids might. No, the teenagers that are doing this, they don't listen to any of this kind of stuff here. They don't know. They don't know. So anyway.
Ms. McFadden, next question.
Did you want me to answer this?
Yeah, Judith still gets it.
Oh, sorry, Judith.
That's okay, that's okay. You would freak out at children, I think, if you did that. No, I really think it's not a bad idea, especially in this day and age, to have some security cameras around, as long as it's cost effective. And who's going to monitor them, all of that has to be decided too, so.
I apologize for skipping you. All right, Ms. McFadden, why didn't all members receive the arched ballot? And why were the ones received were only counted, comma, not verified? Why were they only counted and not verified?
Does anybody else care to answer a question about specific arch balloting?
I'm not qualified.
I'm not
I don't
qualified.
know.
I don't remember.
Agreed that we'll skip that question. Ms. McFadden, next question. What do you think about the vinyl fence program that is no longer, y'all's handwriting is participated in by the POA?
The White Cap Vinyl Fence program was put in place, I'm not exactly sure when it was put in place, but it was put in place several years ago on the premise of trying to make the back fences along White Cap more uniform. Prior to that, if you bought a house on the back to White Cap, your building line and your fence was 30 foot back from White Cap. And at some point, a decision was put in place that if you would buy a vinyl fence, you could move your fence up to only 10 foot back from White Cap. The problem with that is not only they changed the covenants by allowing you to change the building line, but the POA also gave you a rebate back on that fence. So basically, we were paying the homeowner to put a prettier fence in an area they weren't allowed to put a fence. So we came out very critical about this program when we discovered it last fall, and I'm happy to see that it is being ended.
Mr. Brown?
Okay, we may have a little disagreement here. I think that the concept of having vinyl fences up and down White Cap would look great. If we could ultimately figure a way to do it, it would look great. Better than the hodgepodge of wooden fences we have now. Should the POA have to spend money on it? I bet they wouldn't have to if we negotiated better. If the city is going to allow the right-of-way to be utilized to give them the extra square footage in the yard, perhaps if we went to a builder when he's building it and said, you know what, you don't have to build your back fence to get your completion, and then when your new owner buys it, say, you know what, we're going to give you this extra square footage, this extra 20 feet or so, but you're going to have to build this vinyl fence at your cost. I think that's the right compromise. I know if it was me and you gave me an extra 20 feet and I get a nice pretty vinyl fence, that even though I have to pay for it, I'd do it in a second.
Mr. Aljo?
Yes, ma'am, thank you, Wally. So that's a very complicated issue. The south side of White Cap only is what we're talking about, and we're only talking about the homes that have their rear to White Cap, the ones that have their front, because there are some that have their fronts to White Cap, and then of course they're not allowed to have that fence. I'm not sure that it's against the city code per se, because it's the rear of their property, and so that fencing, and it's 11 feet from the curb is what it's written in, and it's written in the guidelines. It's not in any, no covenants have been changed for that. And it's just specific to those homeowners on White Cap on the south side who have their rears to the street. There's some of those fences currently are cement block with wood in between and kind of uneven, and then there's some that are just wood. Some of the wood is in fact 11 feet right now from the curb on the south side, and then there's a bunch of vinyl fences which are not even white, they're beige. But it's what the POA wanted for some reason. I don't know why the POA changed the white rocks on the median to brown rocks. It's White Cap Boulevard, for God's sakes. But at least the Stripe store got white caps for their coffee cups now. and it's on Whitecap over here, so that's pretty cool too. But not to make light of this, this was a really emotional, deep issue last night at the ACC meeting for that one particular homeowner, and it's very serious and it takes a lot of stuff to happen.
Ms. Cutright.
I think it's part of POA's mission to help create harmony on the island. I think if we could get those particular homeowners to want to move their fence line and utilize the vinyl fencing, at least we'll have a little bit more of a harmonious environment in that area, and I think it would be good to upgrade and I probably would help increase their values. And I would think that since they're getting additional property, that we shouldn't have to pay them to do that. But all that could be worked out, and I would suggest then going to those individual homeowners and seeing if at least those that are just 30 feet and have the wooden fence up would be willing to move their line and gain additional footage, which you would think would be beneficial, that they would want to do so. But I think it's approaching them one-on-one, and again, that's a whole thing about communications.
Mr. McKay.
This issue has really already been decided. The board decided that they would discontinue the program. I like what you were saying, where you kind of get it, and Dan said, you know, okay, you guys can move your fence if you do it this way. We're talking about such a finite number of homes in a program that's been discontinued. I don't know that it was really the unintended consequences law, which is one we all know because we live with it. It just didn't work here, and it's gone. It's done. I'd let it be.
Next question will go to Mr. Brown. Describe a situation where you and a colleague whom you relied on for support were in conflict. How did you address the situation?
It wasn't me.
Well, that is a interesting question. I mean, there's so many hypotheticals, and obviously I've had conflict in my life with people. And how did I harmoniously get from point A to point B? Is that the question?
How did you address the situation?
Well, you know, and just addressing conflict in general. How about that? I mean, I think everybody's got a point of view, okay? And I learned a long time ago in banking, if everybody did it the way I did as a banker, then not a lot would get done, okay? So I generally try to look at everybody from everybody's point of view and try to find a way to say yes or agree, okay? And if I can't, I try to explain to them why I can't get there, okay, or why I'm not going to get there. And if I can't help them, I try to get somebody else that can help them get what they want. I had a conversation with a lady today on the phone that the situation came up with, and I tried to help her get a solution.
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Alger.
I got it. Thank you, ma'am. So this is about how to resolve conflict, and it's something with a colleague and all like that. I know one thing that's really helpful these days is if you have a difference of opinion, let's say, conflicts, similar thing, with somebody, and you have a smartphone, and you each have smartphones, it's like who can get the right answer, who can get the real facts first. A lot of conflicts and differences of opinion involve things that are facts or not facts. And rather than argue about it, hey, there's the internet. Let's just pull out, look, see, it's right there. It's true, it's the fact. And then that's, no need to argue about the facts. No need to argue about what's true or not. You can just look the darn thing up. But that's, now there's other things that if you're in an argument with somebody and you think about, okay, well, do I really have any responsibility in this? What is my role in this? Do I have any dog in this fight? Why is there an argument going on here? You go through the levels of whether there's something that you're required to do to satisfy the other person, to resolve the argument. And if there is something and you're willing to do it, then you can usually offer to do it. It might take a little bit of time, and that should resolve it. But then again, if there's nothing that you're responsible for and there's nothing you can do about it, then just let it go. I had one of those this morning, actually, with Rita. It was about a thing, and it's like, well, then I'm out of it. I don't have anything to do about it. I don't want to argue with you about it. You're probably right. I'm out of it, okay? And that was it. And then I went and worked out.
Ms. Cutright.
Well, if I have a conflict with someone, I will go directly to them and find out what the conflict is about and listen. I think it's really important to listen to the other person's point of view. And if you can reach an agreement, great. If not, then so be it. But it doesn't have to interfere with a friendship or a relationship if you're willing to listen to the other person and respect their point of view. And you might change your own mind.
Mr. McCabe.
Well, I'm a lawyer and I'm pretty familiar with conflict. What we do. The example I've given in the past is, and I'm going to put it more in the board context as opposed to a conflict with a particular individual, is we have our monthly partners meetings, and believe me, we get some really doozies going on in there. They're held in private. We figure out what we want to do. We have a vote. But when we walk out that door, we are all on the same page. And if you don't need to work for us anymore. That's the way we resolve the conflicts, and every law firm I have been with, and it works. Because we are a unified front. Yeah, we may, behind closed doors at our meetings, have disagreements, have conflicts, but once a vote is taken, or a decision, or a consensus is reached, that's it. And from that day on, that's our consensus. We all have the same, from the same handbook, as they say.
Ms. McFadden.
Well, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't deal with conflict near as often as Brian does. I work in IT, so the biggest conflict when I'm working on a large project with my group is trying to figure out where to go to lunch. But conflict does arise. I know in lots of situations, especially in a business environment, and sometimes when that happens, all you can do is continue to act professionally, respectfully, and ultimately, if you can't agree with somebody, you just have to agree to disagree. But it doesn't mean that it has to be ugly. So that's how I have always dealt with it.
Next question, Mr. Aljo. How would you attempt to end the political drama on the island and unify neighbors?
Well, I think all you need to do is get a bunch of no drama signs and put them around, and that ends it all. I don't know. I mean, there's always we had this. I've got nothing against anybody here on that, but it ain't that easy. It ain't that easy, is it? So really, we discussed this, and Brian and I agreed with it too. It was at the last meet and greet that. There's drama in this stuff. If you can't stand the heat, you got to get out of the kitchen, because this is where you cook all the stuff. It's in the POA board. The board is the only authority over our property owners association. The committee members don't have any authority to spend money or to make rules or anything like that. It's really just the board, or else a lawsuit. And so. That's about all I have to say about that too. Thanks.
Ms. Cutright.
Can you read the question again?
How would you attempt to end the political drama on the island and unify neighbors?
Well, the more the neighbors are engaged in what is going on, the better. And I think that helps to eliminate political drama. So I also would like to see perhaps information meetings held within various subdivisions, some more events where perhaps the POA and it's more of a social gathering where you can relax and really get to know each other and open up and express your opinion and in that respect, but it's in an informal kind of setting, so we really get to know each other one-on-one. It's too easy over social media because you don't have to face a person to make bad comments and that can really hurt, and then you can't take them back, it's out there forever. So I really think one-on-one interaction and creating a dialogue with members is the way to go to resolve that issue.
Mr. McKay?
Well, I think Judith makes some good points, and there's always going to be drama. It doesn't matter. The board could be unanimous on everything. The board could sing in harmony. Everything could be done. Committees could report timely. Everybody be happy with it. There would still be drama. The solution that I see, and I'm old school because the drama that I've encountered, I've been able to encounter one-on-one. Call that person out, not call them out. That's wrong. But try to talk to them because you find that people sometimes that are saying this stuff on social media are really good people when you look at it. When you sit across the table and talk to them. But get rid of the drama. I hope we can turn it down. It's hurting all of us. It's hurting our property values. People look at that and say, my God, I don't want to live there. We see people post that from time to time. Every one of those is kind of like a cockroach. You see one of those posts, there's probably 5 others that didn't post. It felt that way. So, but it's going to continue, and I hope we can turn it down, but I don't think we can eliminate it.
Mrs. Evans?
You know, everybody sitting here has made both an emotional and financial investment in our community. And, you know, one person's drama is another person's issue. I mean, it just depends on which side of the fence you're looking on. Are we ever going to be able to get rid of it completely? No, I think like Brian said, I think, you know, everything could happen just the way, you know, 99% of the people want it. But there's always going to be, you know, somebody out there who wants things done differently. So I don't think we're ever going to be able to completely get rid of it. It would be nice if it would, you know, tone down some. I think all of us can agree on that, and you know, I'm hoping it will. So.
Mr. Brown?
You know, I think a lot of the drama is derived by social media. I've already kind of told you my thoughts about that. With regards to this neighborhood, social media has a place, but for some reason when it comes to this property owners association in this neighborhood, it thrives on negativity, and a lot of it's just manufactured, just for the sake of the thrill of scandal. But I'll tell you, any of these people up here that get on the board, I think at the board level, I think you will not see a whole, I just don't think these people are built for a lot of drama. I'm not built for a lot of drama either. So I think hopefully that will, after this new election, we'll see a little more harmony on the board and at the board meetings, and hopefully from the audience and social media, hopefully it will calm down a little bit.
Ms. Cutright, next question. If anybody can use the boat ramps, why does the POA pay for their upkeep? Spending POA money on public property, question mark.
I think, hello? Okay. Testing. I think, as I was talking with Jim, that the city also has some responsibility for the actual boat ramps, but we do the parking lot area and the bulkheads. Now, maybe that's not right, but that's what was my understanding. So, but if you're talking about the whole parking lot area being utilized, and can you repeat the question again?
If anybody can use the boat ramps, why does the POA pay for their upkeep? Spending POA money
Well,
on...
let's just assume that's included. I think they mean the whole area, but it's part of the island, and it also includes bulkheads around there, of which we are responsible for the 32 miles of bulkheads, or 35, whatever. bulkheads, we are responsible for their upkeep and maintenance. So it seems to me to be a given fact that you've got to continue to maintain them in order to maintain the high quality of life that we all, this is a marina type community that we are residing in, and that's our responsibility to upkeep this community, and that entails the bulkheads. That's one of the most critical things that the POA does. So I don't see how you can separate them.
Mr. McKay?
I frankly don't know that the city is responsible for the boat ramp or the POA is responsible for the boat ramp. I've never really thought about it. I know that we are responsible for the parking lot. I think that's why you have to have a sticker to leave your car there if you launch your boat. I know you can get towed, and I know those who park that don't have a sticker have to park on the street or get towed, potentially. The actual ramp itself,
Ms. McFadden?
I know back when the canals were basically first dug, probably back in the 60s, I believe, you know, the boat ramps were put in. This was before we were part of the city. The lots where the boat ramps are located, the physical lots where the parking lots are, that is land that is owned by the POA. So we are obligated to maintain it, which is also why we can control the parking in it. Public use of the boat ramps, you know, it's been that way since the boat ramps were put in, and I don't think, you know, could we legally prevent the public from using it? I don't know. I think it would be a very, very difficult thing to try. You know, but would we do put gates up? I mean, on the you know, half dozen, almost dozen boat ramps that we have, it just flat wouldn't work. I have no problem with the public using the boat ramps, and I fully support though how we control the parking in it because that is POA land.
Mr. Brown?
I think this question is part of a bigger question. And that is, what is the city doing, or is the city doing everything they should be doing and can be doing for the folks here on the island? And I don't believe they are. I think they need to be doing a lot more. We pay 28% roughly plus or minus, don't hold me to the number. We pay an extraordinarily large amount of taxes when you look at the overall city budget. And I believe we need to get some assistance from the city on things, whether it be paving the property that the POA owns. Maybe they shouldn't do that. But at the end of the day, I think we need to have some more assistance from the city with regards to a lot of things out here. Okay, and that might be the ultimate solution to our bulkhead issues. You know, back in the day when the city took this over, they did not accept the canals and they did not accept the bulkheads because there were probably only 30 houses in the first filing. Well, now we've got a lot more than that.
Mr. Alger?
Yes, ma'am. Navigable waterways in the state of Texas are open like the beaches are. And so the POA owns the ramps, and the POA is responsible to repair the ramps, but anybody can use the ramps. There have been some ramp repairs done. What happens is the asphalt tends to erode. You know, boats sometimes have oils and hydraulics in the bilges. They open the bilge plug as they're pulling up on the trailer, and it drains out and it eats into the asphalt, and those have to be constantly repaved. Also, the boat ramp at Cartagena has a really severe slope to it, and has wedged some people's trailers if they go too far, and it goes down and off of it. And so the POA has had to do some work there before too. So yeah, the POA is responsible for the issues on the boat ramps.
Next question, Mr. McKay. Does the POA pay property tax on canals?
no.
Ms. McFadden?
Does the POA pay property tax tax on canals.
What were the responses? I heard him say no.
No.
I didn't
You
hear
said no
no.
too.
Oh, I didn't hear Kelly either.
Ms. McFadden, I'm sorry, I missed your response.
Oh, I see. No?
Sorry.
No.
Mr. Brown?
I'm not positive, but I wouldn't think so.
Does the POA pay property tax on the canals? In other words, I would think the land under the canals is what you're talking about, and no, of course not. The POA pays tax on the POA office building. They pay an annual tax, an Oasis County tax like we all do on our properties. But other than that, the POA doesn't pay any tax on the 38-something common areas that the POA supposedly owns. And, you know, that's another legal can of worms if you want to open that up. When it comes to, does the city really shouldn't the city really have responsibility for the common areas? You know, you could throw a bunch of lawyers into a room on that and see what happens, because I'm not so sure that is a very well-defined issue. And it may be, as Dan said, that that something went pretty kaflooey early on, and you know, we got annexed in the 90s, and you know, some of these loose ends didn't get tied off right.
Ms. Cutright?
The answer is no.
Next question will go to Ms. McFadden. And this will be the last question. How many board members are on the MMD?
I believe it's 5. Mr. Moore, Mr. Scanlon, Ms. Sterling, Ms. Sperling, Mr. Holtz, and I don't remember the last one, I'm sorry.
Mr. Brown?
I'm not sure.
Mr. Aljo?
Yeah, it sounds good to me. You know, it's 5, and I don't know who the 5th one is either. Sorry.
Ms. Cutright?
I will agree with my fellow candidates.
Mr. McCabe?
I think Kelly's right. I think that's the board members. It was in the statute.
And you will each have 2 minutes to give some closing remarks. Mr. Brown?
I went first. Can I go last on the closing remarks?
I'll go first, I don't know. We want to reverse, I have no problem with that.
Yeah, I have no objection.
That's fine.
Ms. McFadden?
I don't
Yeah. Makes you
Mix it
feel
up a
first.
little.
Not fair.
Thank you all for coming this evening. And I want to thank Executive Director Smock and his staff for organizing the forum. I want to thank Polly for doing a wonderful job answering the questions and reading people's handwriting. Hopefully by now, all of us candidates have provided enough information so that you can make an informed decision as to who to vote for. I know I've tried. So what I would like to leave you with is this. A lot of progress has been made over the last year, but there is still much to do. And if elected, I pledge to work hard every day for the members of this community. This seat belongs to the members, and I ask you to trust me with your vote.
Mr. Brown? Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. McCabe?
We're going this way. Okay. Yeah, again, thank y'all for being here, and my God, aren't y'all going to be glad when this is over. The one thing I think I want to leave with is there is going to be a March 10th. It's going to be the Sunday after the election. 2 of us are going to sit on the board. It appears that sometime in March, a 3rd would be selected. So we're having a fairly large change. But what I don't want us to forget is on that Sunday after the election, we're still neighbors. We're still going to see each other. We're still going to go places. We're going to run into each other. First thing I'm going to do, and I imagine y'all are going to do too, is take your signs out, because there's too many of them out there. So, and I think on that Sunday, you know, go to church and then take your sign out. I don't know what to do with them. Maybe Christmas presents some here, or the misspelled ones might be worth something. Put them up there with your Beanie Babies and put your kid through college. But the point being is that we're still neighbors, and I've made this point before. 95% plus of us are here because we want to be. Nobody made us be here. Nobody said you had to move to this island. The island's future is really in our hands. We're the ones, us, our children, that can control our destiny. Yes, I want there to be more harmony. Yes, I think the board can work together, and the drama can be decreased. I don't think drama has to be a political word that it perhaps has become. But make the POA dull again. I like that. I wish I'd chosen that. But let's just remember we are neighbors. We will continue to be neighbors long after this election. Any friendships that have been frayed, I hope can be fixed. I've met a lot of people out here. It's been a very humbling experience and a very worthwhile experience, and I thank you for your participation. You vote for me.
Ms. Cutright.
I want to thank you all so much for coming and listening to us, and I feel very privileged to be up here with this group. I think they're all very compassionate and caring citizens and good neighbors. So, and I know you are too, because you're here and you care so much. As I had mentioned earlier, I really think communications is key to solving a lot of the problems, and that means setting up and opportunities to get to know each other better and getting your input and feedback. Updating the website, which I know is underway, is going to make a big difference, I think, in keeping you abreast of what's going on in the area, and I know they're working hard on doing that. So, but there's other ways too that we can communicate and work together on projects that we think are really critical to maintaining the safety, security, and quality of life that we all want to enjoy here on the island. It's our responsibility to do so. And I always believe the motto, service above self, and that's why I really think it's very important to give back to your community, and that's part of all of our responsibility as well. So I would be very honored to represent you if you so choose, and look forward to serving you. Thanks.
Mr. Aljo.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Polly. Man, I wish I could communicate like Judith.
Oh,
my God, that would be awesome. I'd probably get some votes. Brian, I think that's a tremendous motto. That'd be great. Make the POA dull again. That's awesome. That's brilliant. I think it's brilliant. I just want to add 2 L's. 2 L's. But beyond that, okay, we got it. All right, we're good, right? Okay. So vote for me and protect your property rights. And what else? I had some stuff I was going to say. I guess, someday this election's going to end. You ever see Apocalypse Now? And then Colonel Kurtz is out there on the beach. We're going to surf. I said, we're going to surf this beach. The bombs are going off all over the place, and he's like looking at the guy, he's like kneeling, someday this war is going to end. Someday this election is going to end. And like Brian, everybody says, there's going to be 2 of us on the board, and then probably a third nominee, a board nominee. So I don't want to have to do it because it's a lot of work. It's all volunteer, there's no money in it, and I got nothing to gain from it except living in a better POA, and that's the only reason I'm running. This is hard, and people hate you, and they call you names, and they say you do things you don't do, and it's really awful. But the thing about it is, somebody's got to do it, and I'm tired of complaining about it. I decided to run and try to take a shot at it. So thank you.
Mr. Brown.
Dale Rankin in the Island Moon, after the last meeting we had like this, suggested that he had never been to a forum of this nature where it was congenial and everybody got along. Even if they disagreed on issues, it was very congenial. That made a difference to me. And I have seen nothing different from this group tonight. So I think that's important when we think about the issues. Things, the only thing constant sometimes is change, but change comes difficult for neighborhoods and POAs, and we need to be very thoughtful about the changes that we make. And we need to be good stewards of their money and their trust. And I believe that the folks up here along with the board that will be there. I don't think the neighborhood's got anything to worry about.
Well, we have come to the end of the second and final meet and greet, so now it really is in your hands, the voters' hands, to vote. I'd like to thank the candidates for their time, Officer Jenko back there for keeping us safe, Polly, great job as always. We need to get a long-term contract with you. Okay. March 9th, Saturday, March 9th is the annual meeting. You're going to be hearing more about this. I know you've already heard a lot about it. You're probably sick of hearing about it, but it is March 9th at the middle school. Doors open at 10. Texas A&M is handling the ballots. If you have questions about the ballots, you are certainly welcome to call the office or email us, and then we will direct you to Dr. Dan Jorgensen, who's the chair of the political science department at Texas A&M, and he can answer specifics about ballots, okay? To avoid any whiff, scintilla, hint, modicum, pick your adjective, of any possible impropriety. The office, and I said this at the beginning, I will continue to say it, we are not dealing with the ballots, okay? So that we avoid any of that. So please talk to Mr. Brown or Dr. Brown. We will be helping you with that. Anybody have any questions? General questions? Next board meeting, this is off the topic, next board meeting is this Tuesday, February 26th, 5:30 here. So please come, or if you're watching online, join us there. Hello world. So thank you again. It's been a long day. It's time for a beer. 2 drink minimum.
2 drink minimum, always.
All right. So thank you very much for coming. Please vote. Again, if you have any questions, please, you can contact us. We'll direct you to the appropriate people at Texas A&M. So thank you all for coming. Thank you again, candidates. Polly, you were wonderful. Officer Jenko, thumbs up. Thank you. Good night.